Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Furkan, product designer working in London, and you may have heard I made a video where I was talking about I left Ford as a product designer, and now I'm going to be joining Facebook as a product designer on the workplace team, and I'm going to walk through the portfolio presentation that I presented at big tech interviews that helped me land multiple job offers, so hopefully it can help you out as well. So be sure to subscribe to my newsletter where you can grab this presentation for free, and it is read by hundreds of people already. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for future design related videos, and let's get started. So let's get started straight into Figma, looking at the portfolio presentation that ultimately got me the job at Meta, previously known as Facebook. So again, this is a free presentation that you can grab by subscribing to my newsletter. So you got your name, portfolio presentation date, and then add the company name here. And then straight away, I talk about myself. It's always good to introduce yourself, add a bit of personality. People want to understand why you're different, what you can really add before they even see your work. So here I talk about previously I worked at Ford for 6 years, and then I talk about other stuff I do that makes me more interesting as a person. So I like running, gaming, obviously do this YouTube channel that you're watching right now, lots of Figma community stuff, and a newsletter as well. And then I'll do some volunteering as well from Islamic makers, which is really cool. And then I talked at Figma Config way back in 2020, a year ago, and I thought that was really cool to talk about as well. And the last thing I talk about is my design philosophy, like what I believe in as a designer, because I felt like I wanted to match to the company's views and alignments. They have to match with mine as well, so it has to be a fit for both people here. So I talk about inclusive design, accessibility, and open source. It's something I really believe in, and that's why I contribute a lot to Figma community, and I feel like it's something that can set you out compared to other designers. So here to talk about, there's 11,000 downloads. I think there's a few more now on the Figma community page, thanks to everyone that does download those assets. Helpful, as I have mentioned, I want to help as many people as possible, and I've got featured in Figma's config conferences, in their newsletters, and then people messaging their support about they really like my stuff on Twitter as well, which is awesome. And then next up, I talk about some case studies. I don't think I'll go into too much detail in the case studies, but it depends on each actual presentation or interview. Sometimes you have 30 minutes, like 45 minutes or an hour, but here's like a rough guide of what I presented in the case studies. I'll do a separate video going into great detail of some Ford projects that I worked on, and luckily they're publicly facing as well. So always good to have a bit of a screenshot of the actual app to show what it looks like, what people are going to be looking at. And here is an iPhone app that I designed, but they want to know what was your actual role. So I led the actual entire design of this, being the sole designer on the project. The product vision and thinking, designed the entire delivery app, which meant I had to do the research as well as all the visuals as well. And then I worked cross-functionally. It may seem obvious, but it's something they want to know about. And I had about 6 months on this. And then I gave a bit of a background to the project, and I talked about the customer problem here, and then the brief problem statement, and then what the project's all about. I gave a bit of a background here, and then I gave some real life case study photos here. These are publicly serving images as well, so it's really cool so people can see this is a real project that actually added real value. And then it's really important to talk about impact on real projects, like what did he actually deliver. And this project, had over 70,000 parcels delivered, scaled this, and what did you win any awards, the efficiency gains, what did your actual designs actually achieve. And I dive into a specific problem statement here, and I talk about impact and KPIs, the importance here. So we're not just talking about design here, we're talking about the business importance as well. We're talking about the product thinking here as well. And then I'll talk about constraints, because every project has constraints. These were some of the constraints I talked about on this project. And this project is heavily principle driven, but when it comes to presentations, it's really good to be principle driven because it helps you justify and make decisions. And then when you interview questions, you can say that I made this decision because it relies with a principle of reliability or accessibility or efficiency. Because at the end of the day, how do you ultimately make your design decisions? It has to fall back to something, and usually these are principle based. You can't just be like, because a senior designer or a senior stakeholder just told me to do it, I've done it. Have those principles and be able to justify your rationale. And then I talk about field research I've done. I actually done some Uber Eats research to understand how the delivery world worked because I had no previous experience. And I talked about, I've done research, but all right, well done, you've done research, but how does this actually reflect into the case study and the designs of the app? So I talk about that here as well. Then I talk about what was actually the customer's needs here, what was actually in the first release, and what was the customer needs that we were focusing on. And then I talk about the wireframes and how I came up with the designs, specifically like the homepage, like the delivery designs. I talk about different options and then the design rationale of why did I choose these options, how did I get to these options, and why did I choose specific options here. And there were like technical constraints and there was budget constraints of like why I chose certain design decisions and design rationale. But when you talk to product managers and your iOS or Android team, there's a reason why we had to move away from certain things, and they want to hear about stuff like this. And I talk about all the different type of edge cases. It's not too simple when it comes to delivering here. So I talk about like the update location, active states, loading states, and inactive states as well. And then, like I said, one of the principles was accessibility. So I touch on how I actually use this in the design. And we talk about the copy that we made here and the color choices conform to accessibility. That's why we chose certain things here. And then I talk about some icon work because it's something I'm really proud of and I really like doing on a project. So I thought it'd be cool to share that as well in the presentation. And then it's really good to have prototypes because prototypes say 1,000 words, compared to just static images, because they want to see how your interactions actually work day to day. So a quick skim through the prototype is that you can actually just click on the actual prototype, then it will take you to the actual prototype in the presentation. Then it gives you a chance to show within the time that you've got allocated a working product. And then here I just walked through the basic flow of how this actual app worked and the basic information of how the delivery app worked, and then it gave the people a rough idea and it allowed them to connect closer to the project, assess my visual design, interaction design skills as well, which was really cool. So I highly recommend having those prototypes as well. So back to the presentation. So after a prototype, I presented a second case study, and this was FordPass, another publicly facing app, which was really cool, and it was a flagship Ford app as well. So it was used by millions of people, and it was a bigger design team. So here's just a standard, nice publicly facing splash image of the actual product. And then I talked about the project I was working on, which was roadside assistance here. And similar to the other case study, I just give a bit of a background here of what the project's actually about. And then here I basically give a screenshot of what the actual app's like, and it was basically making a live recovery van pickup service on the FordPass app. So when you break down, you can track the van a bit like an Uber. And then here I talk about, because this is a bit different to the other projects, this was a global team, so it was working with North American guys or Asia Pacific guys, as well as other European counterparts, whilst the previous project was just UK based, so it covers that box of having experience working with global teams. And then I talk about themes, again, consistency, empathy and reliability this time. And then again diving into a problem statement here. And here I talk about some more background. I talk about the vehicles are all connected to the internet, their modems. It's good to have an explanation of what's going on, like why this project actually exists is because of a change of the amount of information can get off of vehicles is all connected now. And I'll talk about what's actually in the first release here, and I'll focus on the real-time recovery map on this case study. This time I'll talk about the flow, the basic flow, and I'll work with an external partner as well to work with, get this running. So I'll talk about the perfect edge case of a flow and a bit of an edge case of what happens if they don't share their data, because in Europe at the time of this project it was about GDPR, so we had a massive constraint of making the breakdown experience for people with GDPR and without. And I'll talk about principles here, like putting people first. With people's data GDPR, you have to give them the options, you know. If they don't want to send their data over to an external provider, they won't be able to get the live recovery map experience straight away. But what experience are we going to design without that? Then I'll talk about edge cases, again, really important. Common ones, what happens if they don't have any internet, and what happens if they don't own a vehicle with internet that can connect to the cloud, and what happens if they have data but no cellular network. Here I'll talk about edge cases, again, different wireframes, but it's nice showing wireframes, but you have to explain why you explored these options and how you went through them. And here simply I'll just talk about GDPR personal data. So I was like, look, there's personal data here. You're naming someone called Frank. There's a personal image. We're not allowed to display this with GDPR. So we had to move away from this. And now we just use a generic name like engineer arrives. But then here we wanted to align more with the FordPass design system. And these are all just showing that you can actually back up and you have purpose with your design. And you can actually give the rationale of all of your thinking. And then I talk about the actual final design and align with a full design system here, and the main flow using static screens this time instead of a prototype. And this was an Android design as well, because last time I showed iOS, but you want to show you cover both bases, iOS and Android. And then the impact, the important thing is you've worked on a project, but what happens when it's been delivered, and what did you actually learn as well? Like I talk about, it's okay to release a product and delay it. If the experience isn't going to be good enough, then you might as well just delay it, right? And it's okay, like it's not considered as a failure, it's more of a lesson learned. And then working with external partners, that's a challenge in itself. And that was the final design here. And then the last thing I've done was basically get some quotes from my colleagues, you know, from like reviews, to just talk about yourself and put yourself in a better light. It's always good to promote yourself in interviews because that's what they are about. And these decks do get shared around the team when they're trying to choose who they want on the final offer. And that's it. That is the main portfolio presentation. As you can see, like they're both very similar in terms of what they cover. One's more detailed than the other, but I'm sure you will be fine when you create this, and hopefully this can help you, as it's landed me a job at Meta, well, now previously known as Facebook, and other big tech offers as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully this presentation can help you out land that job that you deserve, and it gives you an idea of what you need to do. So it's no easy feat creating these presentations. Hopefully I made that process a tiny bit easier. Be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below also how you're getting on with your interview process, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.